any exertion. But here, to calm the mind and seek absorption in view of the true nature of prajnaparamita is a difficult thing that requires exertion. This is how one will attain prajnaparamita by exertion. 2. By practicing just one virtue. Question. Is it necessary to practice the 5 virtues to obtain the prajnaparamita, or is it enough to practice 1 or 2 virtues in order to obtain it? Answer. The virtues have a twofold aspect. One single virtue, by interaction, includes all the virtues. 2. One practices the virtues each in turn and separately. In the first case, it is the predominant virtue that imposes its name. It is the same for a conglomerate composed of the 4 great elements. Although the 4 great elements are inseparable, it is the predominant element that imposes its name on the conglomerate. There is, we would say, interaction between the virtues, for one single virtue includes the 5 others, and it is not possible to acquire the prajnaparamita independently of the other 5 virtues. In the second case, by practicing the virtues in successive order, the prajnaparamita is acquired as a result of one or another virtue. When a person who has produced the mind of supreme perfect enlightenment practices generosity, he tries to discover the characteristic of generosity. Generosity is neither one nor many, neither eternal nor non-eternal, neither existent nor non-existent, etc. As was said in the refutation of generosity. Thanks to generosity, the bodhisattva discovers the true nature which is the same for all dharmas. This is how, by means of generosity alone, the prajnaparamita may be obtained. There are people who, by observing morality, have no trouble in not causing harm to beings. But when they seize the characteristics and become attached to them, they provoke controversy. These people who previously had no antagonism toward beings now experience aversion or affection for a system and begin to hate their adversaries. And so, if they want not cause harm to beings, they must practice fundamental equality in regard to all dharmas. If they distinguish between what is sinful and what is not, they are not practicing the virtue of morality. Why? Because they will detest sin and will love its opposite. Their mind becomes excited and they return to harming beings. This is why, by means of a correct view of sin and its opposite, the bodhisattva experiences neither aversion nor affection in his hearts. Seeing in this way, he acquires the prajnaparamita by practicing only the virtue of morality. 3. The bodhisattva has this thought. If I do not acquire patience toward dharmas, I will not always be able to be patient. As long as they do not undergo oppression, all beings are patient. But when suffering comes along to torture them, they lose their patience. They are like these prisoners who fear to be beaten and take refuge in death. This is why I must produce dharmaksanti. There is no tormentor, no insulter, no victim. I alone must undergo the punishment for the mistakes of my earlier existences. From then on, the bodhisattva makes no more distinctions between the object of the patience and the patience itself. He penetrates deeply into the absolute emptiness. This is dharmaksanti. Endowed with this dharmaksanti, he will never again torment beings. The wisdom associated with this dharmaksanti is prajnaparamita. 4. Exertion is present in all the good dharmas and is able to realize all the good dharmas. While wisdom, in measuring and analyzing dharmas, penetrates the nature of things, exertion lends its help. On the other hand, knowing that the true nature of exertion is independent of the body and the mind, the bodhisattva is truly unshakable. Such exertion can give rise to prajnaparamita. Other exertions, in the manner of magic or dream, are false and unreal. That is why they are not spoken of. 5. When the mind concentrates its attention, it can truly see the true nature of dharmas. This true nature cannot be perceived by experience, namely, what is seen, heard, thought, and known. Why? Because the 6 senses and their 6 coarse objects are all deceptive and result from the retribution of causes and conditions. There, everything that is known and seen is deceptive. And no deceptive knowledge merits belief. That which merits belief is the true wisdom alone obtained by the Buddhas in the course of incalculable periods. Since this wisdom depends on dhyana and careful consideration of the true nature of dharmas, we can say that dhyana gives rise to prajnaparamita. There are cases where, without practicing the 5 virtues, a person penetrates the true nature of dharmas solely by hearing, study, reflection, or calculation. The knowledge of means gives rise to prajnaparamita. Sometimes also it is 2, 3, or 4 virtues that give rise to prajnaparamita. Similarly, some realize the fruit of the path by hearing only one truth preached. Others realize the fruit of the path by hearing 2, 3, or 4 truths. The person who has doubts about the truth of suffering finds the path when the truth of suffering is preached to him. And it is the same for the other 3 truths. The person who has doubts about all 4 truths finds the path when the 4 truths are preached to him. Thus the Buddha said to a bhikshu, "If you are able to cut desire, I guarantee that you will obtain the state of anagamin. If you cut desire, know that hatred and delusion will indeed be cut by that very fact." It is the same for the 6 virtues. To destroy the dominant fault of avarice, a sermon on generosity should be preached, and the other faults will be destroyed by that very fact. To destroy mixed faults, the 6 virtues should be preached at the same time. Consequently, if it is a question of a particular behavior or the group of behaviors, the 6 virtues are preached for everybody and not for just one person. 3. By abstaining from any practice. Furthermore, the bodhisattva acquires the prajnaparamita without practicing any dharma and without acquiring any dharma. Why? All practices are erroneous and futile. From near or far, they present faults. In fact, bad dharmas are faulty from close up. As for good dharmas, they are transformed and modified from far away. Those who become attached to them will end up by experiencing pain and sorrow. Thus they show defects from far off. Good and bad practices are like an appetizing food and a disgusting food, both of which have been poisoned. As soon as one eats the disgusting food, one feels dissatisfied. When one eats the appetizing food, one feels pleasant satisfaction for the moment, but later it takes one's life. Therefore both kinds of food should be avoided, and it is the same for good and bad practices. Question. If that is so, why did the Buddha preach the 3 practices, namely, the brahmanic practice, the godly practice and the noble practice? Answer. The noble practice consists of practicing the absence of all practice. Why? Because during all noble practice, one never departs from the 3 gates of liberation. The brahmanic and the divine practices arise insofar as they grasp the characteristics of beings. Although they do not show defects at the time they are being practiced, they will show them later on, and the realities they actually pursue will all appear to be false. However, the saint who practices these 2 kinds of practice with a detached mind does not commit any fault. For the person who practices the absence of practice, thus, nothing exists any longer. Errors, deceptions, and the afflictions no longer arise, for they are purified like space. He acquires the true nature of dharmas by holding his non-acquisition as an acquisition. It is said in the non-acquired prajna, dharmas, form, etc., are not empty as a result of emptiness. They are originally and eternally empty in themselves. Dharmas, form, etc., are not non-perceptible because wisdom does not reach them. They are originally and eternally non-perceptible in themselves. This is why we should not ask how many virtues must be practiced to obtain prajnaparamita. Out of loving kindness and compassion to beings, the Buddhas teach the practices in order to be in harmony with common usage, but there is nothing absolute there. Question. If prajnaparamita can be neither acquired nor practiced, why does the ascetic seek it? Answer. There are 2 kinds of things that cannot be acquired. I. Worldly pleasures, which can be sought but which do not respond to the attempt, cannot be acquired. 2. The true nature of dharmas, the definite notice of which escapes perception, cannot be acquired. Not being non-existent, they include merit and increase the roots of good. Worldly people who speculate about worldly affairs have profit, etc. And it is the same for all the good qualities. But it is according to the mind of the world that we speak about acquisition, in the mind of the Buddha, nothing is acquired. This is a summary of the meaning of prajnaparamita, later we will speak of it at greater length. End chapter 30.